Hey everybody, it's Rob here. I have some good news for all the fellow spin to win enjoyers. The Whirlwind Barb, at least with some variations, is insane for the season. For any like speed farm or farming content, this is the build to play. I'm in the game here right now with my character, and I actually managed to hit the 85 always cap. I managed to hit some pretty crazy notes here with my Barb now. I've been maxed it since my last video where I was just giving you an overview, and today is finally time to go into all the in-depth stuff about the Whirlwind spin to win Barbarian. So buckle up, this is gonna be a rather long video again, and this is one of the best builds to do any speed farming in the game. I actually managed to beat tiers 95 to 100 in about 90 seconds here with the Whirlwind Barb, completely going crazy with a spin to win and the elixir of holy bolts, but also with Turiel Smite. But a disclaimer before we get started, guys, this is a end game guide. This is not a beginner guide. If you want a beginner character, the Bash Barb is your pick. Because this character here, Whirlwind, historically has been very bad at killing bosses, and it still is very bad at killing bosses. But there are some ways we can still do decent boss damage, and we also have this insane area you guys can see here in the footage. It basically just blasts down this pit here in 1 minute. This has been like a record spawn time for me. And I also have a bunch more footage here of me doing this 90 seconds clear in 95 to 100 for hours and hours straight. Maybe I'll add some footage at the end here. We also have the build guide in the description. And like I said, I also have an FAQ that we want to go over about. But you just need to understand, guys, you need Uber Uniques for this build. There is one variant here, which is the minimum Uber Uniques to get and play this build efficiently. You need a grandfather because this is a Whirlwind bleed version, and the bleed is scaling your damage, else you have no damage if you don't have this. You need a grandfather, and I also strongly recommend you have a Shako. If you don't have a starter Sky Ring or you don't have Turiel Smite, there are options like the Rage of Haragas and the Edgemaster we will get into. But this is really an end game build. If you are beginning or starting out the season, you want to be playing Bash Barb. The build for Bash is also going to be linked in the description. You might have seen that already. But this build is a lot of fun, and I have some pretty crazy stats now because I min-maxed this character. And right now, we are basically hunting goblins with this character. This is one of the best speed farmers ever, and it's also one of the most enjoyable ones. So right now, what we're doing here, we're in a dungeon. Basically, extra shrines will appear in the dungeon. We are looking for greed shrines. Usually you do this in the group, but for this video and to showcase the build, I just want it in solo here, so the tier doesn't really matter. We're just in a low tier. Again, this is a speed farming build. It's not a high push or anything. You can do hundreds, you can do whatever you want, but it's not recommended for pushing and not recommended for boss killing, because the main damage is not even coming from Whirlwind. In fact, and I'm going to go into more details later, we only have 1 point in Whirlwind. The rest is coming from the Shako. But what we are doing to deal damage is we use our Turiel Smite. So this, whenever I spin, you see these arrows, like it spawns arrows. So while we are healthy, we are spawning arrows, and this one allows us to go pretty insane with all our arrows and get crazy AoE damage that we can then use Berserk Ripping to inflict crazy bleeds. And on top of this Turiel Smite, if you don't have it, and also if you have it, on top of this, you're also scaling your Dust Devil. So we're using the devilish aspect here after we generate Fury. And we generate a lot of Fury because we get 10 Fury per kill multiplied by all our resource generation. And we also have a bunch of ways here to generate Fury. It's this buff here. So you guys can see here, it's just releasing Twisters every time I do stuff. And this Twister does direct damage that is then also scaled with Berserk Ripping. And some pretty insane values here. Our crit chance and our crit damage with Gushing Wounds, this is the main principle of the build, is a multiplier X for all our damage. So we're getting 5,000 times 140% and then times 0.83 times the crit chance as a multiplier to all the bleeds. And this is like based on our direct damage with Berserk Ripping. You also want a lot of vulnerable because we do have another scaler which is also a multiplier in our Paragon boards. You might have seen this for my other bleed builds, which is Hemorrhage here, giving us another 50% X damage. My crit damage is so high because I'm using the grandfather. You see, if I unequip it, it's only 2,000. If I equip it again, it's now 5,000. And also we're using heavy-handed here. This also is scaling the crit damage. I'm going to go into all the details here. This one is also giving you another 45x. And this is like double dipping because it works for Gushing Wounds, and it also works for the direct damage that we inflict, because both our Turiel Smite and our Dust Devils here from these two aspects that we scale with this one as a multiplier can also crit. So we are getting more direct damage with the crit, and we're getting more bleed damage with the crit as well, thanks to the craziness of how Gushing Wounds works. And that is basically the main principle of the build. And you just have infinite AoE damage. Whenever a monster dies, you will get even more monsters. So I'm not sure if in this dungeon there is any goblins, like I just opened this one. But the first shrine I scouted here is just an artillery shrine. But basically the main principle of the build is like we spawn these arrows, we spawn these twisters, and they inflict bleeds, and they proc even more twisters, and they proc even more arrows with the Holy Bolt elixir. And it's just like a crazy chain reaction you'll see here when I will speed through this dungeon. We also have triple shout. Like on every good Barbarian build, we use 3 shouts. We use Iron Skin, and this one allows us to stay at very healthy amounts of life all the time. We use Wrath of the Berserk because we are spending Fury with our Whirlwind, and our Whirlwind is the thing that procs everything. You see, Whirlwind gains Fury, Whirlwind inflicts more bleeds, Whirlwind does a lot of stuff, and it triggers the Tyrell's Might like crazy, and you don't want to hold it, you want to tap it. Like, I keep tapping it, like when I play here in a second. And I'm just going to show you this gameplay here now. So right now we have this Goblin buff here active, so we are looking for these bags, and this is like right now one of the best ways to obtain items. I have a guide on how to farm goblins. I'm also going to link that in the description. But we are basically just looking for these extra shrines in the dungeons, and we're just doing any low dungeons we can do, usually in a group, but I'm showing it here solo. And so yeah, let's go. So basically we just keep up all our stuff. You can even unlock this, whatever you want, and we basically just keep going through this dungeon. And you see everything dies. Like, I don't even need to do much. See, we go. Oh, no, don't take conduit. That's usually a trap because it nerfs your character. And we are just going here. We are running at the speed of light, and we're just blasting, and everything dies. And ideally, we find a greed shrine, and we kill a bunch of goblins. But you guys can see here, like, I don't have to do much. Like, everything just automatically triggers basically. You just spin once or twice, and the chain reaction starts going here. You guys can see here when I don't hold down my button, I get a lot more proc. So this is me holding down the button. See, it's like not as crazy, but when I spam it, it goes like this. Like, it's way crazier. And these things, they just like keep multiplying all the time. Yeah, we're just rushing through this. Like, obviously everything is one shot here, and we can't die and everything. But again, you can also do this in Nightmare Dungeon and Pit 100s and 90s or whatever is your comfortable level. And you see, like, probably on this low tier, you don't even see it much. But our stuff is applying a lot of bleed, and it's just like a chain reaction. Even if I were to stop attacking, it basically just goes automatically, right? Like, see, I'm not even doing anything. Everything just dies. See, right now I don't have Berserking, so it didn't proc the bleed. Like, one thing to really pay attention to is like keeping your bleeds up. Okay, unfortunately there was no Goblin Shrines here. Would have been too nice for the video. But yeah, you see it on the boss maybe, that we proc a lot of bleeds. You see he was instantly bleeding for all of his life in bleed damage, basically. Again, that's the main principle of the build. Like, we just run around and we just tap Whirlwind and keep all our buffs up. You can put this on the numlock trick, or you can just, like, you know, just spam this all the time. Ideally, you want to activate them when there's monsters in range, but you just spin, basically, and you want to not hold it down, but you want to rather tap it. So we get, like, some crazy procs for the Tyrell's Might. And our Iron Skin will keep us healthy at all times because we get a barrier, and we're going to be healthy to spawn the arrows. And we also get a healthiness from the raid leader. This also helps us a lot, just keeping ourselves in the healthy range whenever we shout, and we shout all the time because we also have Bolt's Chieftain here to reduce the cooldowns whenever we hit multiple enemies, and it's just gonna go crazy. So I'm gonna show you like all my gear and the current stats basically that I'm using here. This is gonna be very advanced gear. Again, there is a version that you can play if you are not having two of the Uber Uniques. You can play Rage of Haragas instead of Tyrell's. You can play Edgemaster instead of Starless Sky. However, we're going to be focused on this Uber version here, and this is my current gear. This also farms, and I'm going to show you some more footage here. This also farms the high tier, so we're doing this here in a 95 pit. Basically the same principle as we're doing for the Goblin bags right now. Like, we're just going, and I think here you can see it a bit better. How the enemies are just instantly bleeding. You see, like, this health bar here. Like, it's instantly bleeding for all their health in bleed. And the build just rushes through here, and this is one of the fastest, I got walled here, but this is one of the fastest pit farmers as well, if you want to farm the materials. It's not good for high pit pushing, because single target, and this build again, is very bad. But this build is just extremely fast. It has basically infinite AoE damage, and it clears the runs really, really fast until you get to the boss. So you must be doing like a relatively low level. Maybe if 95 is too high for you. This was my unoptimized Barb, by the way. I can do hundreds now, but I'll probably make a separate video. But with the current gear level, it depends really on which pit tier you can run comfortable. But it is basically your target to do the runs in under 2 minutes. Because going from 95 to 100 and then taking 3 minutes to kill it is not worth it. Because the materials only go up by 5. So you get like, instead of 59, you get like 63 materials. But you want to be really doing it very fast. And you see, this is the worst boss, like single target. And what is really important on the boss here, that you keep your Berserking up. You see here this Berserking buff. You really want to time like your Wrath of the Berserking and all your other buffs. And you see how much he's bleeding for. And he basically just dies here. So this is like, I don't know, like a 90-second clear. And like my average is probably like about 100 seconds per run. And we just blast it down like this. And I think we do a couple more runs here. And in general, it's going pretty smooth. And this build is just very, very strong to do this kind of content, like very fast. And you want to be doing 2-minute runs, ideally sub 2 minutes, because going from 2 to 3 minutes is 50% more time, but you only get like 5% more material. So 3-minute runs is way too long. You definitely want to be aiming for these like 2-minute runs, similar to in Diablo 3, if you know, when you're farming Greater Rifts. And yeah, I'll just show you all setup here. And everything you need to know to get into this build. But right now I'm playing like slightly different version here with a bit more speed focus. I didn't even change my gloves. It's a bit more speed focus at the moment. And this is what two things I switch basically for speed runs. Is I use, like for Hell Tides and stuff and Goblins, I use Relentless Berserking on the gloves, and I use Ghost Walker. In the higher runs, so like when you're farming like speed farming pits, it's more recommended to go with more damage, so with elements. I probably had this wrong at the moment because I have Inner Calm. But this one should be elements because obviously we're not standing still as much. So we're going to pick the elements here, and then I'm going to show you all my gear. So right now, I'm in the setup for aspect of the elements. There it is. Okay, so right now I'm in the setup for speeds. So this is going to have, excuse me, relentless. Was a bit confusing. Okay, so this is the speed setup for Hell Tides, for Goblins. I think this is also currently the #1 gauntlet setup. It's good for everything, basically, where you don't have to kill a single target boss. So we are rocking Harlequin's Crest here. Cooldown Masterwork is the play. We are rocking Tyrell's Might. Maximum Resistances is the play. We can actually reach some pretty insane amounts of damage reductions because our health pool is not the craziest anymore. We're using this one to get insane toughness, obviously one armor cap as well. We'll talk about the rest in a second a bit more. Then we are using the, and this one is really important, Lucky Hit to keep Berserking, like Whirlwind is a core skill. This is how we keep up our Berserking. It can be a little bit RNG, but you just want really, really high crit chance because then you're getting 4 seconds of Berserking. And yeah, right now my crit chance, I could still get a bit higher because I didn't masterwork it fully. But you want to be aiming around like, I mean, 60% crit chance should be the minimum. And ideally you have like 80% like I do here. But again, depending a bit on what you're looking for. And then crit damage is good. Like if you don't have 5k, that's fine. If you have like, 3k crit damage, you go for 3000 crit damage. And then you're going for about 300 vulnerable damage, a 10-to-1 ratio. So next here is the gloves here. This is berserking damage here. Also, we use crowd control duration because it increases our challenging shout taunt time, and the taunt time also increases our damage reduction. So really important here, the crowd control duration. Then we're using the Iron Warrior. And this one makes us unstoppable whenever we use Iron Skin. It also procs the Ghost Walker. This allows us to move at permanent full movement speed, even when we are spinning, because we are getting 30% from here. We are always unstoppable, and even 4 seconds after, and we can also move freely through the enemies. So we need more than 200% movement speed because our Whirlwind slows us down. And I'll show this to you real quick here when I go and just spin in the open world. Whenever you spin with your Whirlwind, there's a downside, and it's going to slow down your character. So you want to have more. And I believe it's 25% more than the max movement speed. So you guys can see here, when I'm just normally here, my movement speed, it's already 200, right? But when I start spinning, my movement speed can go down. So 177, for example. And that's why you want as much movement speed as you can. I wasn't berserking right now. So when you're berserking and you also have your rallying cry up, it's gonna be working out to have a perma full movement speed, but only with Ghost Walker, so it's so important. We also use Warcry here because that's the only offensive stuff we can get. You can also go with strength instead of the armor, but you gotta get one armor roll somewhere to reach the armor cap. And the same goes for the resistances. You're gonna get like 1 or 2 resistances roll somewhere to reach your rest cap. But you're gonna get a lot of rest from the Tyrell's Might as well. 16 just all rest base. And then what I also recommend using for rest is the Soothing Spice. So this one you can just like use to pre-buff yourself basically. Okay, we have the Iron Skin, we have the Ghost Walker, and then here we have the Berserk Ripping, most important. I also really recommend having one roll with Fury on kill. This helps you so much in speed farm content. And yeah, then the chance, I didn't triple crit this, but ideally you want triple crit on the chance for Dust Devils because you can get up to 99%, essentially doubling your chance to get the Dust Devils. Basically you get double the Dust Devils all the time. Then we have size here, so we have 40 size here, 40 size here, plus another 20. This is gonna give us, I believe, the maximum size effect here when we're outside of town, right? Because this aspect only works outside of town, and 100 is the cap. So there's that. And then we use Whirlwind leaves beyond Dust Devils, so whenever we start spinning, you know we have even more Dust Devils. And this procs every 0.75 seconds, so it procs about... yeah, like just a couple, like every time you basically tap Whirlwind, it usually procs a Dust Devil. So that's pretty insane. And also every time you tap it, it's also gonna pop Tyrell's Might. Then we're rocking here the Fierce Winds for the size multiplier. This one helps you out a lot, just getting more size and more damage basically. It also makes your shouts proc even more twisters. Then we have the Grandfather. This is also very important. The Grandfather is what you want to assign Whirlwind for. Because we have the X in the technique slot here. This one gives us a 1.1x against vulnerable targets. And we also get, because we're using a 200 weapon, we're getting 20% of the base inflicted as bleed. And whenever we kill an enemy, which is in speedruns gonna happen all the time, we get a 1.3x damage multiplier to all of our bleeding damage. And basically, like most of your damage just comes from your bleeds. Then we are rocking a Starless Sky Ring. This one is really good for resource cost reduction. It also gives you a 1.4x multiplier for your direct damage and also for your bleeds. So that's pretty insane. Then we rock Bolt's Chieftain here for the cooldown on the ring. Two things are important here. Obviously, the cooldown aspect here with the shouts. The Bolt's Chieftain is just really good. It allows you, whenever we have a bunch of enemies here, you know, to have like our shout cooldowns still very low. And on top of this, we also have Lucky Hit to make the target vulnerable. This, and also in combination with a couple points in Pressure Point, and make it so that you can keep the target like 90% of the time vulnerable. It's not 100% up, but you have the exploit for the initial vulnerable hit. So this is like your exploit in the starter board. Makes it vulnerable from the start, and then you usually keep it vulnerable. 50% chance from Lucky Hit. And I think you have another, what is it, 30%. You can have less points here because obviously this roll here is extremely good because it makes the target vulnerable for 4 seconds. And I still am looking for more ways to make vulnerable 100% uptime, but we haven't found it yet. And this is like 90% uptime, the best we could do so far. But again, you are wanting to avoid long fights anyways. So for most speed content, your exploit and the 3 seconds of vulnerability is gonna do just fine, especially on range. It's gonna be applied instantly, and you know you're gonna like just range them down with your Tyrell's Might and with your Twisters, and it's just gonna die. And then on the amulet here, we're rocking heavy-handed, and we're rocking the after we generate Fury, we get the Dust Devils. And this is pretty insane. And what you can also do is, if you don't like this, you can take 1 point in Outburst, 1 point in Toughest Nails. And what we can do now is we can just go in somewhere and just everything will just die automatically. Because they attack us, and when they attack us, they die and we generate Fury. You see this? Like, we don't really have to do anything for this to work. Okay, go on my horse here so I don't kill them before I even arrive. So we can just go in the middle here, don't do anything, and everything will just happen automatically. You don't need to do anything. As soon as the first monster dies, it's gonna proc Fury. That Fury is gonna proc Twisters. Those Twisters are gonna proc Bleeds. Those bleeds are gonna proc even more twisters, and they're gonna proc our Holy Bolt elixir, and we can just basically be AFK and chill anywhere we want. So here we're gonna get a goblin now. So we can just go here, do nothing, and everything will just die automatically. And then there's a goblin. Okay, this goblin, he might not die automatically, so we just shoot it. Boom, and we get a treasure bag and a scattered prison. Still have a lot of bags to be collected here. I opened 1,000 of them yesterday, and we actually got some pretty good loot, so definitely worth farming this. And that is pretty much the setup, my friends. All my items right here. We already went over the stats. This is like my current stuff here. Expertise is X plus the sword. Then skill tree here looks like this at the moment. So 1 point in Whirlwind is enough. It only enables your stuff. You can have pressure point if you want, or you can have the thorns, whatever you prefer. But we're going to go into the planner here in a second. We have imposing presence. We have vigor here. We have rallying cry, and this time we don't want to take the fortify because we want to generate more fury for more devilish procs. And we also obviously need fury just to spin all the time, right? Helps a lot. Then we have the iron skin here with the tactical iron skin. This one just gives us an insane uptime on Tyrell's Might. It also gives us the unstoppable movement speed here with the Iron Warrior aspect. Really good combination. Challenging Shout, this time also with a rune, because we want to generate fury whenever we get hit. Warcry, you can use the Fortify rune, you can use the damage rune. It depends a bit. Usually your main source of Fortify is just spending fury here with the Warbringer board. But if you feel like that's not sufficient, you can also play my Warcry. I've just been like experimenting a bit, and I think they are like both like very similar. You can get 10% X, or you can get like 100% uptime on your Fortify. It depends a bit. Swiftness for movement speed, aggressive resistance for damage reduction, shout support of course, and prolific fury for more generation when we berserk. This is going to help us proc even more twisters basically and keep our fury up while we spin. Pit fighter, you can also put points in slaying strike. I often do this when I do a bit higher tiers and I'm speed farming 100. I usually take off some movement speed and just get slaying strike just to boost the boss damage time a little bit, but either is fine. You also have Cut to the Bone here for the multiplayer, Counter Offensive for the multiplayer, Heavy-Handed for the double multiplier, Wrath of the Berserk, and then obviously Gushing Wounds. Paragon, I changed quite a bit actually. I min-maxed it further, so we have Explored in the starter board. We have Warbringer for all of our Fortify needs. We have Ira here just to get Berserking. We have some extra Fire Rest here if you need, but this also gives you some cool life notes. We have Wrath up here in the Bonebreaker board. And Tenacity for crazy life, and this is just going to give you all the multipliers and also reduces your damage reduction or increases your damage reduction when you're healthy. And this one also buffs the potency of your barrier, because when you have barrier and again you want to be healthy for your Tyrell's Might to work, it's just a very good combination to have this damage reduction while healthy here. It's just very strong, and it's quite a lot of damage reduction. We're getting 7.5 and 10, 17% damage reduction just from this. And Hemorrhage of course for the bleeds. On the right side we have Carnage. This time we don't take the Carnage at all, because we don't need it, because Whirlwind is not working with attack speed. And we use Might here because we use the 200 weapon again, Grandfather, to attack with your Whirlwind. And then we rock Marshall up here in the Blood Rage board. Again, you want to make sure that this is a 1.3 multiplier. And then one thing that people always ask me as well is about the Berserk duration. I really like to take these extra points, like these 3 extra points here. Like 1, 2, 3, just to increase your Berserk duration, because if you don't have Berserking, your Berserk ripping and your bleeds will not proc. So you need to build your character that way, either with lucky hit or with very high crit chance, to keep your Berserking up at least 90+% of time. And also pay attention, at least when you're fighting a boss in like a speedrun in a pit, and it's not dying in 5 seconds. You definitely want to pay attention to use your Warcry and also your Wrath of the Berserk wisely with this Berserk damage duration. You want to have 60%. I really recommend that. It's going to help you a lot with your damage. And because I get a lot of questions where people just ask me like how you even kill a boss on Whirlwind. Again, it's not a good single target build, but it is possible, at least on the up to like pit 100, I would say. And I'm going to have all the frequently asked questions. I already made a separate video on this. I'm going to link that in the description. There's like a lot of questions here about how to reach rest cap on Barb, how to reach armor cap, how to get more life, and this kind of things. I'm going to leave that in the description. But I also gathered some more FAQs here specifically for the Whirlwind Barb, and we're going to get into that in just a second here. Just going to show you the last board, Decimator here. Again, vulnerable, we hit the target, and we use a Twister glyph. And this one is going to give us some good additive for the Dust Devil again, which translates into bleed damage, and it's also going to give us a 1.13x multiplier whenever we create Dust Devils. And again, with Whirlwind, this is all the time. We have Dust Devils like up permanently. That's how it looks in-game, guys. Now we move in the planner for a second. So there are these different setups here. Again, one here with a bit less Uber Unique, so you can just, you know, take your Starless Sky out, get in an Edgemaster, and take your Tyrael's Might out if you don't have it, and get in a Rage of Harrogath. This has a decent synergy because whenever you're afflicting bleeds, which you will do with your Whirlwind, you're getting your cooldown back, and this is going to help you further to maintain your Berserker. But in the ultimate build, you definitely want the Tyrael's Might and you want the Starless Sky, and this is going to help you so much. And then there's the other setup again with the Helltide, the one that I'm playing right now, which has Ghost Walker. And in the pit version, we just take the elements aspect, and then we take out Ghost Walker, and we take a Relentless Berserk here on our boots. And this is basically how it looks. All the Paragon, all the stuff. So let's get into the frequently asked questions. I'm going to jump a bit back and forward here. And this is going to be quite a bit. Again, if you did not get the answer to your question, if it's more like these questions here, it's very, very similar to the Bleed Bash build in many ways to scale of defenses, and also in many ways to scale your offenses. And again, the full FAQ, I have like a 1.5 hour video with all the timestamps that I'm also going to link in the description. This video also going to have timestamps. So let's get into the specific questions. So just again, keep in mind, this build is not good at killing bosses. Play Bash. The Bash Barb is the best boss killer, and it's also the best beginner guide. It's also better for high push, Bash or Flay. And also, if you don't have Uber Uniques, I do not recommend playing this build. Like, this is an Uber Unique build. Whirlwind is a cool and fun build, but really there is the two Uber Uniques that you need, and this is the Harlequin's Crest and the Grandfather, because else you don't scale your bleeds properly, and the Harlequin's Crest helps you a lot with your Fury management. Such does the Scar Sky, but the Harlequin's Crest is even more important. So you must have a Grandfather and a Shako to properly play this build. Else, you can still have fun in the game, but just play Bash. It's gonna be a lot better for you, because you will just stand at the boss of your Whirlwind and you won't be able to kill it, I'm telling you. So it is very good for open world content, it is very good for the Helltide, it is very good for Nightmare Dungeons and Goblin farming, it's very good for any type of like pit material farming, because you really want to aim for 2-minute runs. It's the top gauntlet build, and it's also the most fun in my opinion. And I am a fellow spin to win enjoyer, and I know many of you are too. It's one of the most fun builds in the game, because you just move and you're dealing infinite AoE damage, and everything just explodes like left and right. Like, you have like a very fast pace, and you're just going, man. You're just, you know, you're just gaming, you're just blasting, and just everything just dies. It just looks at you. And yeah, if you want to do anything like that, Helltide or material farming, any speed content that does not include any bossing, this is the build for you. And the biggest thing to understand is how you scale your damage. And again, I made this video here with the FAQ that I'm going to link in the description. You want to have certain minimum stats. So your aim should be getting close to these stats. 5k crit damage, 500 vulnerable, 80% crit chance. Like, this is definitely, you know, some nice stats to reach. Again, like, depending if you're buffed or unbuffed, but you're definitely looking into like these kind of ratios here. So this is my unbuffed stats pretty much. 77, 5k, and 440. I would like to get a bit more vulnerable, but you want to have, again, a 10-to-1 ratio, and you also need to have a high crit chance, because this is all double dipping separate multipliers for your gushing wounds and also for your direct damage. So this is very, very important to get. The best way to get high crit chance is to get a greater affix roll, if you can, on gloves and also on your neck. This helps you a ton. And yeah, I don't have like greater affix rolls on my rings or anything, but like, you could have them, of course. But yeah, this is a decent gear requirement. But min stats, I think you should aim for 3000 crit damage. Again, you need the Grandfather, 300 Vern, and about 70 crit chance. This is like what I would I mean, we can maybe make this a 65 because I know 70% will be hard to reach for many people. But again, this 5 crit chance is just so much damage increase because it's increasing your direct and it's increasing your bleeds through gushing wounds. But these are like the kind of the minimum stats you want. Then we have the mechanics here. Whirlwind, again, it does not work with your attack speed. I still have attack speed on my ring right now because this is my bash ring. And I didn't really want to roll it off, you know, so I still have it. And yeah, at the moment, obviously, like you want a main stat here or you want some life and stuff. And you could get it here. Like Whirlwind, it does not scale with attack speed. It also cannot overpower at all. So this is not happening. You don't need to scale attack speed and you don't need to scale overpower with this build whatsoever. And again, the Gohr's Devastating Grabs. This one is also not recommended for this build because you are not dealing damage with your Whirlwind. Your Whirlwind, again, it just enables you to proc your Twisters with your Dust Devil aspect. It only enables you to proc your Bleeds. It only enables you to proc your Tyrell Smites. But Whirlwind itself does not deal damage, so you don't need any ranks in Whirlwind. You don't need any Whirlwind explosion doing anything. Like, it all completely is irrelevant. It's less than 0.1% of your damage. Main damage is coming from your bleeds, and some damage is coming from your direct attacks. But again, the most of the stuff is coming from your bleeds, because that's what we scale. And really important to understand as well, we are tempering crit damage everywhere. You see, we are kind of a ranged build, I guess, multiple reasons. Like, we have a lot of range damage. So close damage doesn't really do us much good. And also close damage is not a multiplier, but our crit damage is a separate multiplier. Same for our vulnerable. We make it multipliers with our gushing wounds for crit damage and with our hemorrhage for vulnerable. So in order to get the crit damage tempering, guys, you must make a rogue. And only on the rogue can you find the plan to temper crit damage on your gear. And I tempered like crit damage pretty much everywhere. And where I didn't temper crit damage, I got Berserking. I'll talk about that in a second. But you need to make a rogue for this. I know it sucks, I know it's weird, I know it's confusing, but that's what we are at right now. The Barbarian, the master of weapons, is too stupid to figure out how to temper crit damage. You need to make a rogue, and the best way to get the recipe that you need for tempering, you just go in the Helltide and farm there until it drops the plan. For me, it took until about level 60, I think, and then I got the plan. So it will drop. It's called like Marksman Finesse or something. I mean, you can let me know in the comments, but there's like some marksman plan that gives you crit damage, basically. And what you also want to do is have 2 rolls with Berserking. I have it on gloves, and I have it on one of my rings. And what this allows you to do is just get your Blood Rage without maxing all the Berserk damage here, because you want the points elsewhere. And you guys can see when I start taking off stuff, the Blood Rage goes lower. So you want to make sure that you just hit the 30%. I have a pretty bad roll at the moment on my gloves, so it's only 64 out of 80. So I could get another 15 here, and I could take off, you know, some more Paragon points. So what I did right now, I have 1 point here that you don't need in Ira, because you see here without this point, it's only 29. So I'm investing an extra point here, and you could take this in live notes or something if you have this higher roll than me, but I need this point here. And this one basically gives me 1% X damage, so definitely want to take this. So 2 rolls of your Berserking. I use gloves and one of the rings, but you can also use your one-handers or your amulet, whatever. Just make sure you temper the crit damage on your roll. That's really important to understand. And also to have the right ratios roughly. High crit chance, high crit damage, high vulnerable. That's everything is basically a single multiplier, a separate multiplier scaling your damage. Pretty crazy, especially your bleed damage. And then yeah, again, Whirlwind itself does not deal any damage. Assign the grandfather to your weapon. Again, like you can do this by hovering the skills, pressing S, and then pressing the middle mouse button. You guys can see here. I can just change this by pressing my middle mouse. And you definitely want the grandfather selected, because again, you are getting the 2-handed sword expertise, and you're getting both the benefits. You can't just use it with another stuff, because if I put the 2-handed sword expertise in the technique slot, it only gets 1 effect. It never gets the rank 10, the secondary effect, the 1.3x. You see, it's not active. So we want to put the X in the technique slot for the 1.1x, and then we want to have 20% of direct damage dealt as base bleeding. This is going to be always there. We want to have the 1.3x after we kill a bleeding enemy. It's really strong. Why only 1 point in Whirlwind? Again, Whirlwind does not do our damage. So Whirlwind hold versus keys versus spam. So I need some monsters to demonstrate this. I hope there are some left here on the right side. Well, this is basically the main reason is the Turel's Might. And the procs are vast. Actually, let's go to the dummies. I think that's the easiest to showcase. As they don't die. Here I would just kill them instantly. So we're gonna get ourselves a bunch of target dummies, and you guys can see here the crazy difference it makes between holding down the button, which is not good, versus tapping the Whirlwind button. And the DPS is pretty crazy, and the difference is pretty crazy. Drinking some water here for a second. Alright, so we're gonna just get some dummies here. We're gonna use multiple, we're gonna use boss. Okay, so this is me tapping Whirlwind. You see the crazy amount of arrows that proc. And this is just like tapping it basically. Like all the time. Maybe you can see it better here. So this is tapping. And now if we were, let me like reset my cooldowns. Now I'm gonna hold it. And you see how much worse it is. So you see like these are all bleeding for like a bunch of damage already. Okay, and now I'm holding it. Right. Okay, there we go. But you see how much less procs it is. This is me holding it. It procs like once every second or something. Right? Once every second. And now we go back to spamming it. Wait, like this is still holding, and now we spam it. See how much faster it is? Like it's about like, I would say 2.5 to 3 times more arrow procs. Because basically on every instance, on the first frames, it's triggering. So again, tapping, and now holding. Way slower, holding. Now we tap again. Like it's just way better. You know, like a lot better. Like it just shoots out so many more of these. And yeah, you're also gonna see like how many things we generate here overall. And the damage numbers are pretty insane. Yeah, can you do this in tier 300? I wish. Now again, and also what you will notice here, if I take Rage of Paragon, look how fast we will reset our cooldowns now. And this is also an option, but now obviously we don't shoot arrows. But this is gonna reset our cooldowns like fucking crazy, right? And we just blast here. This is Rage of Paragon setup right now. You see how the cooldowns just get reduced whenever we're hitting fast. This is also much faster when you're just tapping it rather than holding it. But yeah, this is basically the main principle right now. That's how it works. And you see they're all bleeding for like hundreds of millions already. And it goes fucking crazy. And it just keeps proccing. But yeah, definitely recommend the Turel's Might. So spam it. How to generate Fury. This is another one. So mainly we generate Fury by killing monsters. Obviously on the target dummies it doesn't work. But what we do on the boss is, you see on Whirlwind here, you get 4 Fury whenever you hit elite enemies or bosses basically. And we also generate Fury with our War Cry, and also we have very like low cost. You see 25 is base. Once I stack this, it only costs 15, right? So already 15, we hit a target, we get 4 back, and we have a bunch of resource generation, for example here. So we get like 8 back in the end. If you have your Rallying Cry up, you're gonna get even more back. And that's basically how we maintain the resources. Sometimes when you're engaging a fight, it can be very tough on your Fury, so you wanna have your Rallying Cry, because it's gonna generate. Let me spend a bit. Let's say I start the fight, I have no Fury to even spin. So one thing to fix it is just get hit. Like let yourself get hit by the enemies, then you get Fury because you are Barb, that's how it works. Generate by using skills or taking damage, you take damage, you get Fury. Or alternatively, you see now I can't spin, but you can just use Rallying Cry and then I have Fury and then I can start spinning. That's basically how it works for the Fury, because I also saw that question a lot of times. And yeah, how do you keep up your Berserking? So again, a lucky hit, attacking a lot helps, but you also want to be paying attention to your Berserking. You can't always see it, but you can definitely use your War Cry and your Raster Berserk wisely if you are fighting a boss fight that takes a couple of seconds. You just want to make sure
hey
that
Rob
this works.
Bennett's do beim Thorn Barb Flay Emma.
So yeah, I'll check that in a second. Let me finish this. Thank you for the support. So this is going to be like basically no Berserking, and then when we have Berserking, you see, we should be able to keep it up. This is multiple targets. Like on one target, it can be a bit more difficult. But you see, this is like in the run, like you just keep it up by this. And also, you usually get Berserking. And whenever you kill bleeding enemies from your Blood Rage. 5 seconds. This is actually quite a lot. And obviously if your Berserking is out, you can just use Wrath of the Berserk to get that Berserking damage. So that also works. So just many things here. And but it's still not 100%. So if you get unlucky, and again, you're relying on lucky. I don't usually like to do this. But in this build right now, there is no other real solution. You can let me know in the comments if you think of one. But keeping up Berserking is essential. If you lose Berserking, you're not going to inflict... See, if I just attack, it's barely not inflicting any bleeds. But if I attack with Berserking, you see the bleeds are going like way crazy. You already have like instantly like 10, 20 million. So you need this for your Berserk ripping. If you don't have it, Berserking, you're not going to deal any damage in the high pits. Perma Burn on the target again. This one works with, and I really recommend the Greater FX wall here on the lucky hit because it's high chance and it's also for 4 seconds. How do we swap weapon with Whirlwind? Again, you hover this and you press your middle mouse key. We already went over this a second ago. Or there you go. What was the other questions here? Yeah, I have no damage on the boss. What to do? You need to make sure you have your Berserking up and you manage your cooldowns properly, basically. And also get the 60% Berserking duration. Gear alternatives, we already talked about. 2 rare else, you can use Rage as an alternative. And Starless Sky, you can use Edgemaster. And again, for Grandfather and Shako, there aren't really many alternatives. If you don't have a Grandfather and you don't have a Shako, the alternative is don't play this build. Play Bash Barb or play this build, but you're not going to enjoy it much because it's very weak without Grandfather. And without Bleed, your Whirlwind is not going to do shit. It just doesn't do any damage, guys. You need the Bleed and you need the Berserk Ripping to inflict the Bleed and then scale it. Because for the Whirlwind, unfortunately, you see it only does 24 damage. There's like no way of scaling it. Like it just doesn't deal any damage. There's no multipliers to it. I really hope that going forward, going into the Vessel of Hatred, which is probably going to be announced here later today, that we're going to get, you know, some more love to this like fan favorite, and also one of my favorites, Barbarian builds, man. Spin to win is so much fun in the games, and I really hope that at some point Whirlwind is going to evolve, you know, from a support skill and going to ascend into an actual DPS skill. But Whirlwind has basically been a support skill ever since the game launched, because we had so many nerfs to Whirlwind. Whirlwind was one of the best builds, and also with the Gohr Riders. It actually was the build that I cleared Nightmare Dungeon 100 with on launch, and also the build which I used to reach World First level 100 to just farm, because the spin to win playstyle is just so much fun and it's just so enjoyable here. If you're watching this, like, this is just the ultimate farmer, you know, like it's just so good and so fast in doing anything, even on this like 94, 95 pits here. And I've been blasting, it's just such a blast, like infinite AoE, you walk, you deal damage, but right now none of this damage is even coming from Whirlwind. Again, Whirlwind is a support skill that's enabling you to proc your Twisters, and it's enabling you to proc your Tyrell Smite. But I would just like to see, you know, I don't know, like some sort of like Whirlwind build. And I think here I'm fighting like one of the worst bosses. Okay, actually this one is actually kind of okay. This one is the Seahawk. But yeah, basically this is how the boss fights go in the high pits. Even if you have like some rather single targets. Like you see them bleed is pretty good. But yeah, the Whirlwind itself is still atrociously bad against single targets of any kind. And I'm really hoping, you know, to see some buffs to this. Let me know what you think in the comments, and how are you feeling about the current state of Whirlwind. Like, this build definitely enables you to have a lot of fun on it, but not really in any, like, you know, competitive or high tier sense. Like, I'm telling you, if you are taking this build and you are trying to clear like a pit 130 or something, right now the highest bar clear is a pit 142, and we just did 153 in 2-player. And there's just no way to ever kill this boss. Like, if you were to fight the boss on a Whirlwind Barb, you would probably fight it in 150 plus, where it has 10 trillion health. You would probably fight it all the way until Diablo 5 comes out. This is how bad Whirlwind is on single target. And also, if you want to kill Lilith, or if you want to kill any Uber bosses, definitely do not recommend Whirlwind Barb. Play the Bash Barb. It's just so much better. And we'll see what's going to happen with this. But I'm just hoping that at some point we're going to have some direct, you know, Whirlwind damage build again. This build, don't get me wrong, is pretty cool, but it's just like relying on all these environmental effects. And I'm just like, you know, the Holy Bolt elixir here plays a pretty big part in this blasting here as well. Like it's makes the build quite a bit stronger. And yeah, here I'm fighting the Den Mother here. Also like a single target boss, I think until like 50% of the HP. It's still going down pretty decently, right? But with Bash, I just one-shot this boss. So it's only like a 95, but it's still like one of the fastest ways to just farm your materials. And yeah, with that, it pretty much concludes the guide. Let me double check the FHQ. But yeah, pre-buffs here, yeah, we use Holy Bolt and the Anti-Venom Elixir, so you can use, you know, these two at the same time. Again, also Soothing Spice and Shores of War if you want. It's just, this is gonna get me to all my rests. You see, if I take these two, all my resistance look like this. And it's pretty cool. And the build is actually rather tanky with this rest, because it doesn't have like this, like a 100k life basically. It doesn't have like this insane amount. And you see, I'm just like not even doing anything, and these guys are already bleeding for all their health. And the build's pretty cool, guys. I really like that Spin to Win is in the game again. And yeah, we'll see what's gonna happen in the future. But if you're looking for a cool Helltide Goblin farmer, or if you just, you know, want to join the Spin to Win hype, this build is for you guys. I hope you enjoy it out there, and I hope you enjoyed this guide. There's gonna be timestamps for everything if you want to double check something. And we're also gonna have the other FHQ video in the description. So D4, log in, and I wish you very much fun with the Spin to Win Barb. I'll probably upload some more footage here soon on the YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed the guide, my friends, and take care. GG. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe, leave a like or a comment. I'm also live on Twitch almost every day, so come and say hi.